back to the Awesome Life podcast. My guests and I are here to provide you inspiration, to give you some hope, some joy, to have you be able to love your life the way you want it to be. Because we are all individuals. And I want you to know that I have been exactly where you are, saying, what the heck do I do now? So my guests and I are here to help you find that inspiration, find that hope, give you the resources so that you can have an awesome life. I'm Karen Stelch, your host, and I'm a reformed people pleaser and self-doubter, as well as the creator of the Awesome Life Success System and the Heart Energy Techniques that simply yet powerfully allow you to release the unwanted limiting beliefs that we have. And we all have them, let's be honest, we all have them. And my guest today is, she's phenomenal. She's just absolutely phenomenal. Although I've been married for 53 years and I don't plan on taking her up on her services at all, I know that there are a lot of you out there who may be going through or contemplating divorce. But for whatever reason, you're not sure of where to go. You have children perhaps that you want to care for, and what are we going to do, and so on and so forth. So anyway, let me introduce you to my guest today. She is so great. I love her. Her name is Chloe. Oh, nice and easy name. She's a certified divorce coach and conflict management specialist. Her objective is to help people divorce with less conflict by improving their communication and negotiation skills with their ex. This allows them to divorce faster, cheaper, and less destructively. Most importantly, it helps preserve the parent's mental health and the children's stability and well-being. And whenever we have children involved, those are the things that we want to make sure our children are our future. So welcome, Chloe. I love it. I mean, you're so young and beautiful and wearing weight. Oh, I love her smile.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. And the reason is, although it's, like I said, I've been married for a long time, but I know a lot of people out there are really struggling. You know, they're in unhappy relationships and they are not where they want to be. So, but you look so alive and vibrant and raring to go. Tell us your story. How did you get into being a divorce coach?
And organically, I have to say, it wasn't exactly the plan. I had a traditional corporate career, and I was living my traditional life, I guess. And about 10 years ago, I got divorced, and my children were very young. They were 1 and 3. So I was definitely one of the first people in my friends group and in my community to get divorced. And what happened is that little by little, as other people started contemplating divorce or proceeding with it, they came to see me. They were asking me questions. I became the divorced girl that they could come and ask questions to. And it was quite informal. Just, I'd grab a coffee with somebody and just share with them my experience, help them deal with the emotions that they were facing, the fear a lot of the time, and give them some practical tips based on what I'd experienced and what I was learning from others. And then over time, people started sending friends that I'd never even met to come see me. I was getting random calls from people I'd never even met or heard of, saying, "Oh, so and so said that you helped her so much with her divorce. Would you be able to speak to me and give me some advice?" And so it kind of grew on its own. And it got to a point where I realized that I was getting a lot more satisfaction out of helping people and supporting them at a time where people feel very lonely and isolated, then I was getting out of my corporate career. So that's when I got certified and set myself up as a business, and I'm now doing that full time.
Wow. Well, honestly, I have to be honest with you, Chloe. Um, I've never heard of a divorce. I've heard of a divorce coach, but never a
Yeah.
certified divorce coach. That's interesting.
Well, certification is important because actually it's one of the challenges, I guess, with coaching in general, is that anybody can call themselves a coach. That it's not a regulated profession. And it means that there's a lot of variations in terms of the quality of the services you're going to get from one coach to the other. So for me, it was really important to get certified. And there's an official body based in Florida that gives certification for divorce coaching. And it was very important for my clients, for me to know that my clients could trust that I wasn't just somebody who was making it up, or thought that I could coach others purely because I had gone through divorce as well, but that I actually have a code of ethics behind how I work, and some structured learning and experience that allow me to provide that kind of service.
Oh, you are so right. You are so right. Having that education, having that certification does help along the way. However, you already had experienced it. You had to find out the hard way a little bit, didn't you? How to
Yeah,
make
but see,
your
that's what I take
children.
with me. That's exactly, I think it's a mix. I think being divorced doesn't make you a good divorce coach, but the experience that I've had, and then the experience that I've witnessed with my clients over the years, have allowed me to understand and to see, the common mistakes that people make, things that can really make a divorce go pear-shaped, or actually make it go quite fast and quite well. And I myself experienced divorce both amicably and very acrimoniously. So I've had both sides of the equation, and I know, the harm that can be caused when you enter a very conflictual divorce, and how you can make those efforts, and the work you can put into it to avoid that happening, and the benefits that that brings with regards to your children, with regards to your own well-being, and of course it costs and the time it takes to get divorced.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So what are some of the mistakes that people are making in their divorce? Can you share some of those?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's four main ones I would say. There's a lot of, smaller and more regular things that people do, but I think that the main one is not having a plan. A
Mm.
lot of people decide to get divorced at a time where their relationship is not going well at all, and they often decide at a point where they're in an argument with their spouse, or they're very upset about something, and that's when they decide, that's it, I'm done. And so they proceed out of anger, but they don't actually think through what it's going to look like.
Mm.
And that's one of the things that I spend time with my clients doing is, thinking through what they want their life to look like after this divorce. How do they want the divorce itself to play out? What's their ideal scenario? Do they see their ex living down the street and their kids being able to just go from one to the household to the other easily, or do they never want to see their ex again? So all of these considerations need to be really looked at to make a plan, and to make sure that you're handling the divorce from the very beginning, based on that plan. So I'd say that's the first one. And my second tip, which is based on a common mistake that I see a lot, is not having the right professionals around you. And that means, that's on the one hand, people who don't have any professional advice and decide to proceed without consulting anybody, without understanding how the rules work in their country, what are the things that they need to be aware of, that kind of thing. But then there's some people who also choose the wrong professionals. There are a lot of professionals, especially in the divorce space out there, who are very aggressive, who like litigation. And if your objective is to divorce with as little destruction as possible, then you're not going to want to hire what they call a Rottweiler, a divorce attorney who's going to really go to war, because that's not what you're looking for. So being clear again with regards to your plan and where you want to be heading is going to allow you to then go to the professionals that are going to be the right ones to support you through that journey. Does that make sense? There's
It
a couple
does.
of other mistakes that come up a lot. I think one that I hear a lot and I see a lot is people who are seeking emotional justice
Mm,
because they feel so wronged for whatever reason, whether there's been infidelity or just they've been disappointed in the other person and who they've turned out to be. They can be really negative feelings toward that person. And a lot of people think that going to court is going to be the way of getting justice. And finally, everybody's going to see how horrible he or she was and all the bad things they did to me. And that is not how a court of law works. And unfortunately, the emotional part of things is something that you have to work through outside of the judicial system, with a therapist, with a coach, both, but really to process what's happened and be able to move on. But it isn't a judge who's going to give you that satisfaction of feeling like the other person is a horrible person and you are now vindicated, and you can live a happy life because you know that you've been recognized as a victim. So that's something that people often misunderstand because we see in movies these wonderful courtroom dramas where the judge stands up for the underdog and exposes the other person's bad behavior. But that's not the reality of it. So don't go to court if you think that that's your main objective. And then the last one I think is people give up, and that's where I really step in helping people because actually statistics show that 90% of couples when they start their divorce intend to divorce amicably. So there is that good intention to start with, right? And people understand that it's easier, better for everybody if they can do it out of court. But then what happens is that they negotiate and it gets difficult because there's disagreement. And every divorce will have some conflict. And that's when people give up. They think, oh, we're stuck. We're going to have to go to court. And they just stop talking to each other and move on down the litigation route. And really, what's important here is to work with a coach or with another professional who can help you in getting unstuck. And a lot of what I do with my clients is help them think creatively about other options. They often think things are binary. It's his way or my way or her way. But actually, there's often other options that could be explored that require some degree of compromise from everybody, but also some degree of victory from everybody at the end. And so I think that's one that I see happen a lot is people just giving up because it gets difficult.
I can
I
see
think that's
that.
it.
I can see that. Yeah. And we have a tendency to see right or wrong. We are right, they're wrong.
Yeah. Yes.
But the fact is there's a large space in between that is kind of the gray. It's not black or white.
Yeah.
There's this gray space that, especially if there are children and pets involved,
Agreed.
because they pick up so much. Would you agree? They're the
Completely
ones that,
agree.
yeah.
And that's really the main argument for amicable divorce. I mean, there's all those other reasons I mentioned, cost and speed and mental health for yourself, but sparing your children that kind of experience because all the research shows that it's not the divorce itself that hurts the children, it's the parental conflict that they witness during the divorce. And so if you can show your children that you can collaborate and that you can work together, you're showing them a wonderful example, but you're also allowing that transition to be as painless as possible for them and to not feel torn between their two parents, so that child centricity is really key to all of the decision making during divorce. And everybody always says their children are their top priority, and I think that's very true. They all mean it. But what happens is we lose track of that because we have all these big emotions during the divorce, and there's a lot of him against me, me against her kind of feeling. And we forget that a lot of what we're doing is impacting these children who are completely caught in the middle of it all. And if we keep their interests at heart, then it allows people to see a bit clearer and to see the other person not as their enemy, but as the child's father or mother. And it's the mother or the father of your children. So you don't want to destroy them.
Well, that's it. I mean, our children are our future.
Hmm.
And if they are really too afraid to say something, because if I mention dad, mom's going to be upset. If I mention
Yeah.
mom, dad's going to be upset. So I'm just going to go around and hide out and not talk to anybody about anything.
Yeah.
And and I am in such a turmoil because I'm just a kid, for crying out loud. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
supposed to know all this stuff. I don't have the wisdom of somebody who has experienced this, and I am unique. I am alone, and nobody is going through the exact same thing that I am.
yeah. Not even their siblings. Every child in a family experiences differently. Different
Ex-
age, different genders, all of that makes a difference.
It does. It does. So what sorts of things might you suggest for people to have a more amiable divorce? Or
Yeah.
do you ever look at it and say, well, is divorce really what you want?
The starting points. I mean, in an ideal scenario, people come to see me just at that decision-making points. And we do have that conversation because the very common thread that comes out is I'm afraid.
Mm,
I rarely hear people say, I don't think I want to get divorced. I'm not sure I really want to live without that person. Most of the time it's I kind of know this isn't the right person for me, but I'm really scared to proceed, which
mm,
is a very valid fear, especially given how divorce is portrayed in the media. But looking at it as an opportunity, it changes your outlook. And so from that very early stage, it's looking at that long-term objective. Where do you want your life to be in 2, 3 years' time? How do you see yourself living? And that's what keeps people going because it is a hard period of time. It's never going to be easy, even if it's amicable. There's a lot of change, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of heartbreak, big feelings during that time. So it is a period of time that you're going to have to live through. But the question is, who do you want to be at the other end? And how do you want to look back at how you behaved during your divorce, when you get to the other end? So having that long-term vision is really key to being able to make the decision and to then proceed based on those values, based on that plan.
yeah, I can see that. And of course, a coach is fantastic at that. That's how I got into coaching, was seeing that I, I didn't want to have that regret.
Yeah,
So what do I need to do to live life without regret? Now, with
yeah.
that said, we all regret some of the stuff we've done through life.
We're never perfect.
Where, yeah, perfection, strive towards excellence, not perfection, because perfection is in your own mind, nobody else's.
Absolutely.
And what is it that is most important to you? Do you, Let me ask you, as you are helping these people understand and communicate with each other, do you ever also communicate with the children?
Do not. I don't work with the children. I work with the parents, either
Mhm.
individually or as a couple. And the key message that I'm always trying to convey is that there is so much more to gain out of doing things amicably, and that no matter what strong feelings you might have towards your spouse, no matter what anger, resentment, whatever it might be, it's not worth destroying everything in its wake, and it's not worth the cost, financial and emotional cost, of going through a destructive divorce. So I think it's really about people understanding the value of seeing divorce as an opportunity to start anew, to start a life where you're with somebody or on your own, but on your terms and in a way that works for you. And if you see it that way, it's a wonderful new opportunity. It's not very often we get to start afresh. It'd be an equivalent of a career change, for example. We don't do those 10 times in our life. And so in a lot of ways, it's starting with a blank canvas and being able to build that life that you really want. But it requires letting go of the security of the known and the environment you're familiar with. And a lot of people I speak to say, oh, some days I'm so sure I want to leave her or I want to leave him. But then the next day it's better. So I think, oh no, actually it'll be okay. And that's a very common experience, and it's not clear cut. And that's why it's difficult to make that decision. But if you're clear about the fact that your current relationship isn't the right one for you, then you might as well move on and actually give yourself a chance to live the life you want to live.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever help people see that perhaps um maybe this isn't the right thing for them.
Well, it's not my decision to make, of course, but I've
Yeah.
had people say, you know what, I think I'd like to go see a couples therapist. So I actually have quite a few couples therapists in my network that I signpost to my clients because some of them want to give it another try, or even just to have a last chat to understand where the other person is standing. Are they both on the same page about it being over, or is there something that can be salvaged? So there'll be times where people go and have that conversation, and they may or may not come back. I don't always know if they haven't come back because they've decided to not divorce or because they've gone with somebody else afterwards, but I'm hopeful that it means that they've been able to make things work.
Yeah, it is all about making things work, isn't it? And whenever we're dealing with another person, it is important to be able to have that communication, have that negotiation, because awesome life is negotiating,
It is,
you know?
especially when you're untangling two lives, right?
Like,
There's going to have to be some splitting. So by definition, you're splitting things up. So there's going to be conflict and there's going to be disagreement. But if you can both be committed to making it happen, outside of litigation, then you learn how to speak to each other. You learn how to work together. You learn how to compromise, to meet the other person halfway. And those are skills that you keep for the rest of your life. And especially if you have children together, you're going to have to make 1,000 other decisions over the next few years about your children. I mean, depending on their age, of course, when you're getting divorced, but they could be quite young, and then you still have to decide on secondary schools, you have to decide on colleges, you have to decide about all these health related decisions that are going to occur, and you're not going to go to a judge every time you can't agree. You need to learn to make decisions together, and that's where having those skills is going to be a massive advantage that you take forward with you beyond the divorce itself, as a way of working together. And you know that you've done it once, you can do it again. It may be more or less easy depending on the conversation, but you've got the toolkit to have those conversations and to make the right decisions with your children really at the heart of the considerations. And that's always the key.
that is the key, isn't it? They have to understand, the parents have to understand that the children are the key, and staying
Yeah.
together for the children is not necessarily a good
That is
thing.
a myth. That is a complete myth. I mean, especially when it's a very conflictual relationship, and people are staying married supposedly for the children, but they're raising them in an environment of conflict and constant yelling and argument. And when they see their parents unhappy, what kind of example are you giving your children anyway? And is this really better than them being in a household where there's only one parent, but at least it's peaceful and it's comfortable and it's not, tense all the time? I think that's how people have to look at it, rather than thinking that they're breaking up their children's childhood, because actually the conflict they witness is what they really retain.
And it's interesting too, because a lot of parents, I expect, will say, but we never argue in front of the kids. We never do this in front of the kids, but there's this energy.
Sports. But I mean, to be honest, very few parents never argue in front of the kids because sometimes it's just logistically impossible, and sometimes it's passive aggressive comments, or it'll be a little pun that they think the children don't notice. But as you say, children soak up the energy. They can sense, right, when there's no love, when there's all this resentment between the parents. They feel it, and so even if you're putting on a facade and pretending that everything's okay, they can tell the difference between when they go to their friend Joe's house, and Joe's parents are holding hands, or calling each other darling, and then at home actually no, they call each other names, or they can see those things and they feel the tension, and that's actually why it's also important to tell children early on about the divorce, because when people make that decision to divorce, and they often think that they have to wait until they have all the details ironed out. We'll tell the children once we have everything agreed, so we can tell them with certainty exactly which day they go to whose. And but actually the children can sense all of that tension, all of those decisions that are being made about them. They can feel it, especially if you're cohabitating. So tell them early on. Tell them what you don't know. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. It's okay. We're figuring it out. Don't worry. Your parents are speaking to each other and are going to find an arrangement that works for you and that makes everybody's life happier. And you talk them through it, but pretending that everything's okay. doesn't fool anybody, and it really it creates a lot of stress for children because they don't understand what's going on, but they can sense something's off.
Yeah. Yeah. It is that sensing that something is off. They don't know what it is necessarily. And it may not be leading to divorce, but the kids are terrified it is.
Yes, exactly, because they don't know what it is, right? What
Right.
is this problem that's I keep hearing whispers about and I'm sensing? Because also other adults come in and out, grandparents, friends, they overhear little bits and bobs. They can tell something's so it's never a good idea to hide things from your children in general. Even if it was, you were deciding to move abroad or something, the earlier you can tell them, the better. And when they're getting a bit older, it's a good idea to involve them in the conversation. It doesn't mean they get to decide, but child-led mediation is also really a really good way of incorporating their point of view, which is often very different to what the parents have in mind. And they have considerations that are their own little considerations in their own little world. On Tuesdays, I usually go for ice cream with my friend Joe after school. I'd like to be able to still do that. So that means I can't go to daddy's on Tuesdays. Well, the parents won't be thinking about it through that angle at all, but it might be something that gives the child a lot of stability and a lot of comfort to know that they'll still be able to go with Joe to ice cream, get some ice cream. So speaking to the children if they're old enough and clarifying that they're not making the decision, but that they're contributing and we want to hear their point of view, that helps as well in refocusing the parents' approach and trying to create a more creative approach to how they can arrange the co-parenting.
Fantastic. Now, may I ask you something a little more
Of course,
personal?
of course. Yeah. I'll tell you if I don't want to answer.
I love it. So you said that your divorce happened when your children were 1 and 3.
Yes,
Pretty young to be able to be making any informational for you and your ex-husband to be
for
making
sure.
good decisions for their benefit.
Yeah.
How did you make that amiable?
Well, I think we were both committed to keeping it amiable. That was really where it started. Is we both recognized that the marriage wasn't working, which helps, but it's not necessarily a condition for this to work. But we both agreed that we did not want this to be destructive. We wanted to remain maybe not friends, but at least friendly. We knew that with our children being so young, we had many years ahead of us of working together and having to make decisions for our children and co-parenting. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't destroying everything. And it was also a way for us to honor what we had, because at some point that relationship was good. And we didn't want to destroy all the positive memories that we had from those times, that those still existed. We just didn't want to continue together. And so I think that commitment we had and that emphasis we put on communication was really key. And we spent a lot of time negotiating the terms, literally sitting around our kitchen table. And then there were a few things we couldn't agree on, and we asked my father to help us find a compromise. So he acted as a mediator. But there's a lot of a lot of ways that you can do that, whether it's formal or informal mediation or collaborative law. There's a lot of options out there that people don't realize exist,
Mhm.
and my services are one of those. It's who do you lead on to help you continue with that intent of getting divorced amicably, but even when it's hard, who's going to be there to help me through the hard bits? And that's exactly where we need that support, and that's what makes a massive difference in people's ability to divorce amicably or not.
And that's where a divorce coach comes in, because you are there
Exactly.
to support them in whatever area they might need that support. And
Yeah.
you also have the resources if you are not the best person to be helping them along the way.
Yeah, I help them identify the right professionals, back to my point earlier, who can support the right ones with respects to what skill sets they need. Do
Mhm.
you potentially need a financial advisor? Do you want to speak your child to see a child therapist, whoever it might be?
Mhm.
But also, how do you make sure that that's the right person for you? And in particular, when selecting a lawyer, there's a lot of pre-work around, what is the right lawyer for you based on your plan and your long-term objectives. That's definitely something that I support them through, and I help them just stay the course. It's tiring. It's very difficult psychologically going through divorce, and so sticking to it and not giving up and saying, "Oh, I'm just going to let a judge make a call for me." Really, really owning your divorce and treating it as business. I think that's really where you get the best results because people can think clearly rather than emotionally, and they make decisions that are always centered around long-term objectives and the children's best interests. Those are the two North Stars that people need to keep in mind and that we often lose sight of when we're caught up in all the emotions. And my job is to bring them back to that and to give them those North Stars to use as a compass.
To hang on to. That makes total sense. How long does something like this usually take for you? Do you have packages or how do you do this?
Yeah, so I offer different packages of hours. People can buy 3 hours, 6 hours, or 9 hours, and they stay with me as long as they feel they need. What I've noticed is that a lot of people like to come for a few sessions at the decision making time, and then need time to process because it's a difficult decision to make.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I won't hear from someone for 6 months, and then they come back. I finally decided, and I've taken this leap, and so then they're ready to go. So it's not necessarily a linear process, but when people come to me in the early stages, they can stay with me for years because the ongoing relationship with their ex is still there when there's children involved. It doesn't end with signing the papers. And actually, a lot of the time, it gets quite difficult after the divorce is finalized because
Hmm.
your traditional support system is demobilized. You no longer have a lawyer. Your friends and family are in the mindset of, oh, well, now they're done. Let's all move on. And actually it can be really hard getting used to a whole new way of living, a new way of co-parenting. Sometimes you're taking on financial and professional responsibilities you didn't have before. Sometimes you're taking on child care responsibilities you didn't have before, household responsibilities. So it requires a lot of adapting, and you're doing all that at a time where you're probably grieving the relationship you thought you would have. You're trying to support your children as best you can. It's very demanding. And so in that post-divorce phase, a lot of people need that extra support to keep going and to keep that long-term objective in mind and to continue going and to face their new reality and get used to it. And sometimes it's challenges around co-parenting. When you're no longer married, there's less incentive for everybody to try to accommodate the other ways of parenting, the other person's way of parenting. So it can be an ongoing challenge way beyond signing the papers.
Yeah, and maybe there's another spouse that comes into it or another partner that comes
The
into it.
typical scenario. You're right.
Yeah.
When somebody meets, I mean, that's what happened to me. We had a very amicable divorce, and then he met somebody new, and it completely changed the whole relationship. And that's where also thinking long term in your arrangements and having that understanding of the things that could change and trying to anticipate how that would work and how that would feel is going to help you prepare for those scenarios and handle them hopefully a bit better.
Hence having a good divorce coach.
Absolutely. And having one who's encouraging you. I mean, there's all kinds of divorce coaches. There's a lot of different niches. But for me, my passion is really turn, I'm trying to help people turn their divorce into an opportunity. And so not make it something destructive. There are a lot of people, divorce coaches or others who are very much focused on high conflict divorce, which is a very common issue but doesn't always have to be. And I think my objective is really to help people understand when their relationship isn't that conflictual and can actually be worked through so that they can achieve the best results rather than assuming that, oh, because we don't agree about this or that, that's the end of it. We're going to have to go to court.
Ah, love it, love it. So you have a bit of an accent. I will tell people that Chloe O is in London, England.
I am.
And
But I'm French originally. So I
okay,
was
that's
born and
why your
raised in
accent
France.
was a little different.
A lot of people think I'm Irish, although I have no link to Ireland whatsoever. But no, I've been in the UK 15 years, so I think I've probably soaked up a bit of the British accent. but my mother is American and my father's French. So I come from a multicultural family, and I grew up in Paris, but I've been an expat for 20 years. And that's why I specialize in helping expats. And I like particularly dealing with those kind of situations because it does make things a lot more complicated. There's a lot of questions that arise that wouldn't in a divorce that's a local relationship, and so I love to be able to help people through those specific issues as well as the traditional divorce situations they're dealing with.
Fantastic. So you can help people wherever they may be. Eh,
Absolutely. I work with people around the world and I coach in French and in English. So I have people, coming to me with either language. Yeah, people are all over the world. A lot of them are either in an expatriate situation or they're married to a foreigner, and they're living on their turf, or their spouse is living on their own turf. But it can be particularly challenging for the follower, the spouse who has followed the other, because they are much more isolated and much more vulnerable at the time of the divorce. Sometimes they don't even speak the language of the country they're in. They have to come to terms with a local legal system that they don't necessarily understand, and they don't have their friends and family around. So it's a difficult situation to be in, and it's something that I like to be able to help people through because I've gone through it myself, and I know the difficulties that arise. And I think that there's a lot that can be done to make that situation less distressing and more even with the other, more balanced with the other spouse, so that there can be a proper negotiation.
And it's all about keeping that positive vibration as alive as possible in a very difficult situation.
Yeah.
And this, yeah, we have that. We have difficult situations. It's how we get through those difficult situations, and having you as their coach, it can really make it a whole lot better. So how can people get in touch with you, Chloe O?
Yeah, well, they can. I'm hoping you'll be sharing my website somewhere here, but it's also up on the screen here. It's the divorceandseparationcoach.com, so quite easy to remember. And they can book a free discovery call. So I always offer a free call for anybody who's interested in my services. I think it's really important to get a sense of who we are, for them to feel a sense of who I am and whether they can trust me and they feel comfortable with me, and for me to feel comfortable that the issues they're facing are things that I can help them through. So we have that informal chat for them to tell me about their own situation, what's keeping them up at night, why they think they need a coach, and I talk them through my own services, and I explain, the pricing structure, etc. And then we decide or not to work together. But it's very easy for people to book that call because it's all over my website. The link is right at the top, and there's also a lot of free resources that I provide on my website that people can go to get that initial information. I have a whole series of videos that I call Mythbusters about all the typical misconceptions that people have about divorce. So I've tried to really provide a lot of information out there because my objective is to help people be better informed, be better prepared, and manage their divorce in a way that's going to be less destructive. And so that requires having information and knowing what the options are.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And yes, absolutely. Your website and any resources are going to be in the show notes below. So
Perfect.
by all means, reach out to Chloe O. Yes, she is a divorce coach, but the fact is that being able to communicate with someone who is in a way that you can do so without horrendous emotions involved. That's when we need to see what the reality is, and having that mentorship that Chloe O can offer. And all right, elephant in the room here, Chloe. Chloe O is now your brand because your last name is unpronounceable. So we're not even going to go there. It's Chloe O. That's how you find her. Chloe O. That is the most amazing person ever.
Karen.
So everyone, do you have any last words for any
I just tell people, just make sure that you're getting the right professional support. if you're going through divorce or if you're thinking about it. Just speak to people. There's a lot of resources out there. I'm more than happy to have that free initial call with you and to talk you through what the options are, how it can work, what are the challenges you can expect. Just being prepared makes so much of a difference. And knowing what to expect at a logistical level, what does the process look like, but also what to expect at an emotional level. It really allows you to go in that decision with your eyes wide open. So please don't hesitate to reach out and get that information. That there's really a wealth of information online. It's lovely to get it directly from someone who can tailor it to your situation. But either way, it's a very important step to take before you proceed with your divorce, because it's from the very beginning that you're setting the foundations for how that divorce is going to go down. So think about it early on.
That's key. That is key. And I love that you offer that free consultation. If somebody says, yes, I am the coach for you, I am the person, I can solve all of your problems, I can make this all happen, run like the wind.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit too good to be true. It probably isn't true.
Uh, it's all about our own, and we are each unique in our needs. I need somebody who will be methodical, thoughtful, caring,
Pathetic.
loving,
Yeah.
all of those things. And if you're talking too fast, I don't, no, I can't deal with this. So that's me personally. But a lot of
Yeah.
people love that. Hey, I'm from New York. And I'm all right. I like you, but I'm not sure I'm going to hire you for my coach.
Very personal relationship. So you want to make sure it's the right person for you. Just like a therapist. I mean, you wouldn't choose anybody. They need to make you feel comfortable.
Exactly, exactly. So all of her details will be in the show notes below. And thank you, Chloe, so much for your
Thank you for having me. It's
wisdom.
been a pleasure.
Oh, it has been for me as well. And your wisdom is profound, and she's been through it. She knows what she's talking
Yeah.
about. And she has gotten herself certified, unlike a lot of coaches out there.
That's true as well.
So by all means, reach out to Chloe O. And until next time, be awesome.